The auction hall smelled of dust, old leather, and quiet goodbyes, and no one noticed the man in the back until the bidding fell silent at $10, because no one believed that was the price a once feared police dog would end with, and yet there stood Officer Daniel Carter, broke in every way that mattered, raising a trembling hand as the final call echoed, unaware that the moment he bought a retired K9 named Rex for the cost of a fast food meal, his life was about to change forever. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and quiet miracles that happen when no one is watching, take a second right now to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from, because this story begins in the shadows but it doesn't stay there. Daniel had been a police officer for 12 years before a single night unraveled everything, a routine call that turned into chaos, an explosion of sound and fire that took his partner's life and left Daniel with scars no one could see and a badge he could barely bring himself to wear, and after months of sleepless nights and paperwork that felt like punishment, he resigned quietly, trading his uniform for silence and a tiny apartment that echoed with regret. He came to the auction that day not to save a dog but to punish himself, drawn by a notice that the department was retiring several K9s deemed too aggressive, too unpredictable, too broken to serve or be adopted easily, and Rex was the last one brought out, a massive German shepherd with cloudy eyes and a scarred muzzle, his file thick with commendations and warnings, a dog who had found explosives, chased armed suspects, and taken down criminals twice his size, but who now sat alone in a cage, unmoving, as if the world had finally convinced him to give up. The crowd whispered about lawsuits and liability, about how some dogs were better forgotten, and as the bids climbed and then died, Daniel felt something twist in his chest, because he recognized that look in Rex's eyes, the look of a soul trained to fight and then abandoned when the fighting took too much, and when the auctioneer's voice cracked as he announced the final bid of $10, Daniel didn't think, he just acted, because for once he wanted to choose mercy instead of walking away. Bringing Rex home was not the victory Daniel imagined in that fleeting second of hope, because the dog did not wag his tail or explore the apartment or curl up to sleep, he paced endlessly, nails clicking against the floor, flinching at every sound, growling at shadows, and Daniel spent nights sitting on the floor, back against the wall, staring at the ceiling while the dog kept watch as if expecting an attack that never came, and the neighbors complained, and the landlord warned, and Daniel wondered if he had made another mistake he couldn't undo. Days turned into weeks, and the struggle deepened, because Rex refused to eat from a bowl and would only take food dropped carefully on the floor. He refused to rest unless Daniel was in sight, and when a car backfired outside, Rex went wild, slamming into doors, barking until his voice broke, and Daniel, shaking and overwhelmed, found himself reliving the night he lost everything, the same panic, the same helplessness, two broken beings trapped in the same small space. Money ran out quickly, because Daniel's savings were thin and Rex needed a vet, training, and patience Daniel wasn't sure he possessed anymore, and there were moments when he stood at the shelter door, leash in hand, convincing himself that returning the dog was the responsible thing, that love wasn't enough when you were drowning, but every time he looked down, Rex would sit, perfectly still, eyes locked on Daniel with an intensity that felt like a vow, and Daniel would turn around and go home. The turning point came on a rainy afternoon when Daniel collapsed on the kitchen floor, exhaustion finally winning, his chest tight, his breath shallow, the weight of guilt pressing so hard he couldn't stand, and in that moment, when the world narrowed to darkness, Rex did something no one expected, something no training manual could explain, because the so-called dangerous dog broke through his own fear, pressed his body against Daniel, and began the exact emergency response he had been trained for years ago, nudging, grounding, staying present, refusing to let the man slip away, and when Daniel came back to himself, gasping and soaked in tears, Rex was there, steady and calm, his head resting against Daniel's chest, reminding him how to breathe. From that day forward, something shifted, slowly and unevenly, like light creeping into a long-abandoned room, because Daniel began to heal not by fixing Rex, but by walking beside him, early mornings on quiet streets, small routines, gentle consistency, and Rex responded in ways that surprised everyone, learning to trust silence again, learning that not every raised voice meant danger, that not every night ended in loss, and neighbors who once complained began to wave, children watched from windows as the scarred dog walked calmly at Daniel's side, and rumors spread that the most dangerous K9 was somehow becoming a guardian of peace. The true shock came months later when a fire broke out in the building across the street, flames racing upward while smoke filled the air, and as people panicked, Rex snapped into action, pulling Daniel forward, leading first responders through thick smoke, alerting them to a trapped child no one had seen, and when it was over, cameras flashed and reporters asked questions, stunned that a dog written off as unadoptable had saved a life, and Daniel stood there, rain-soaked and shaking, realizing that sometimes the things we throw away are the very things that can still save us. As the story spread, donations poured in, offers of support, apologies from those who doubted, but the real miracle wasn't the headlines, it was the quiet nights afterward, when Rex finally slept deeply for the first time, no pacing, no growling, just peace, and Daniel understood that $10 hadn't bought him a dog, it had bought him a second chance, a reminder that broken does not mean useless, that healing is not loud or perfect, and that loyalty can survive even the harshest endings. Right before this story ends, take a moment and comment the word hope if you believe second chances can change lives, because stories like this deserve to be felt, not just heard. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that love can come from the most unexpected places, please like, share, and comment to help this message reach someone who feels forgotten today, because somewhere out there is a person, or a dog, waiting for someone to believe in them, and sometimes all it takes is $10, one brave choice, and the courage to stay when walking away would be easier.